Hello and welcome to the Leathercraft Masterclass with me, Phil. And it's good to be back in the hot seat doing a podcast again. And today's topic is going to be all about leather alternatives. I occasionally get emails and DMs asking about this, but strangely enough, a lot of the lives that I do, this creeps up. This question about, what kind of alternatives to leather do you enjoy using, or have you used, or could you recommend, for various different reasons. Some people like the idea of using something that could be marketed towards people who are vegan or don't like the use of leather. There are some people who are excited to just try something different. And I think there is a number of different reasons that people want to use leather alternatives. And they asked my advice on it. Now, I have kind of limited experience in using it. I found my medium, let's be honest. I found leather, and it's something that I enjoy using. It's something that I'm passionate about, something that I love. So I'm not really out there looking for the cutting edge, what's the latest leather alternatives that we can use, because I feel like we already have some alternatives that aren't necessarily imposters or trying to be leather. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. I get asked about the mushroom leather quite a lot as well. I haven't had any experience using that. Using something that is just made of fungus. I don't know how durable that would be, or if it's tanned in the same way as leather. I'm not really educated on that, so I can't really talk about it. But I do get asked about it quite often. If anyone does have any samples, feel free to contact me and I'll give it a test. But pineapple leather is one that I was sent a sample from one of my old students, actually, who had some. It was probably the worst excuse for leather that I've ever handled in my life. Very nice of them to send it to me. I don't think I've ever seen them use it themselves. They're very much a leather worker, but they got some and sent me some to see what I thought. But it was weird. It was this really coarse, it looked like the coconut mats that you wipe your feet on. It was kind of like a slightly more refined version of that in thick cloth form with a weird plastic coating over the top. It looked nothing like leather. It was absolutely awful. I've got it somewhere. I don't know what to do with it, but yeah, not great. So that's kind of my experience with one of the main alternatives to leather that's marketed. But I think if you're making the choice to produce something in a leather alternative, for whatever reason, whether it's weight considerations, you want to make something that's a little bit lighter weight, a certain level of durability that you think perhaps leather may not be the best choice, whether it's ethical or conscious reasons, whatever it is, whether I'm not going to go into that, but that's some of the reasons people go with. I think there are good alternatives, like, for example, waxed canvas. That's a good choice if you want to make a tote bag, if you want to make even a wallet, even a watch strap. Waxed canvas is a very strong, durable, water-resistant material. So it can take the place in certain circumstances from leather. Another one is your usual coated canvas, and this is something that perhaps Louis Vuitton has made more famous than anybody else. But this is just a cotton canvas with a polyurethane coating. Now, polyurethane or PU coating, we kind of associate it with fake leather. We associate it with like wood varnishes, like Minwax wood varnishes. But polyurethane is very, very strong and very, very durable in itself. I use polyurethane sheet for something unrelated to leathercraft, and let me tell you, for something that's flexible, it's incredibly tough. It's even hard to cut. If you cut a slice of it and then try and break it with your fingers, it's very, very durable. I think even polyurethane sheet could probably be used as an alternative to leather in some circumstances, but using it as a coating for canvas is a very, very good idea, I think, because that makes it very durable and very water resistant. So kind of along the lines of Louis Vuitton, it can be used for wallets and cases and watch straps and trunks and luggage and whatever. Another one, which is kind of the precursor to coated canvas. It is a kind of coated canvas, but it's called oilcloth. It's a little bit like the original Gore-Tex, if you will. Now, oilcloth, if you Google that right now, all you're going to see is cheap tablecloths, because that phrase is used for what it has eventually become today, which is, you know, those tablecloths, they're kind of cheap, you see in cafes and things like that. It's fabric on one side, and on the top it's just a plastic coating that's shiny. It might have patterns or pictures on it or whatever. That's what we use the phrase oilcloth these days, but originally it was a very densely woven canvas, usually thick canvas, that has been coated with several thin layers of boiled linseed oil. So boiled linseed oil turns into kind of a flexible varnish. So you paint it on or brush it on or whatever, leave it to dry sometimes for several days, put another, and you build up this layer, or all these layers, until it becomes this waterproof or highly water resistant, at the very least, substance. That's been taken over by waxed canvas in that sense, because waxed canvas is going to be a bit more breathable. But oilcloth is actually something I would like to make a bag, or I don't know, make a case exterior or something. It would be really cool. For anyone that wants to try it, you can absolutely try it. Just be very cautious when using boiled linseed oil and cloth, canvas included. If it's screwed up especially and then put somewhere like a bin, it can get very hot and it can actually spontaneously combust, and that's it's no bueno. If ever you do this, you do it outside on a sheet that's been spread out and stretched out, and you put it on in multiple thin layers. And while I have it here on the computer, there's a little interesting thing on oilcloth for those that want to try using it. Historically, and this is from Wikipedia, pre-19th century oilcloth was one of the very few flexible waterproof materials that was widely available. Leather was expensive, very expensive in large pieces, and required regular maintenance if it got wet. Oilcloth was used as an outer waterproof layer for luggage, whether wooden trunks, flexible satchels, and for carriages and weatherproof clothing. So interesting history on oilcloth. Boiled linseed oil doesn't have the most pleasant smell, though. It does go away eventually, but it does hang around for a long time, so I don't know what it would be like making a large piece out of it. So I think there's even I can't remember if there's a company, I think they're in the UK, that make not leather goods but bags and cases and wallets and things like that from old used fire hoses. That's kind of cool. There's a little bit of history to that, and it's interesting and it's different and it's unique. I think that's kind of cool. I would 100% make something out of that. But I just don't like the idea of using imitation leather. Like years ago, okay, I was younger, and kind of very experimental with what I ate and diet, and very, very much health conscious. I still am to a certain extent. But I watched too many Netflix documentaries and thought the next best thing was to go plant-based. I want to try going plant-based and see what kind of health benefits there were. I ended up doing this for 6 months. It was quite a disaster. Digestive issues, oversleeping all the time. I'd needed like at least 10 hours a day of sleep just to have enough energy to get through the day. I tried all sorts of supplements, B12 supplements that helped me digest, plant proteins and things like that, and it was just no use. I went back to meat and instantly felt better. It was crazy. Anyway, so I tried it. It didn't work for me. Whatever the case, I never liked fake meats. I thought, what's the point? It's never going to be meat. It's never going to be that. You're never going to try plant-based bacon and it's going to be delicious, or at least to the same extent as actual fried bacon. It's never going to have that crispy, umami, kind of salty, smoky flavor that you're going to get from bacon. So why with the vegan sausages and the vegan cheese and that kind of stuff? I tried it and it was just gross because I'm used to eating the real deal. And I kind of look at bringing it back to leather. I look at leather in much the same way. If you can never beat leather with an alternative. go with something that has similar properties, but isn't trying to be leather. It's its own thing. It has its own unique history, perhaps, its own feel, its own smell. And I think, wax canvas or coated canvases or oilcloth or fire hose, it has its own interesting attributes that could be used instead of leather if you wanted to, or with leather if you wanted to. Now, recently I made the Cotswold carryall, and that was using Harris tweed, and that was with leather trim and leather interior and leather on the outside in certain areas, and that makes a really pleasing case, relatively lightweight for what it is as well. But the issue I have with fake leather is it doesn't have that X factor. It doesn't have, like, people have talked about fine art having three distinct properties, which is time, place, and emotion. There's something that invokes a feeling or an emotion from a specific time, a specific place, and how you felt when you were there. For me, when I handle English bridal leather, or I pick bridal leather up and I smell it, it reminds me of being a kid at my granddad's house in London, and at the back of his wardrobe, like closet, this is the word I'm looking for, where he would hang all his coats. At the bottom, he had his briefcases. One was a doctor's bag. I think there was a satchel of some kind in there. And there was this large bridal hide box. There's obviously some kind of caseboard on the inside with brass locks on the front. And inside it carried a trumpet. He was in a brass band when he was younger, and he always kept his brass trumpet. And I remember when he would bring it out, I would feel and smell the leather. It had its own distinctive smell. I was not interested in the trumpet at all, but I remember being interested in the locks and how they worked. And I must have been very small, but it invokes that emotion of time, place, and how I felt. My emotion, I felt cared for and looked after. And loved, and it's crazy how these things can stay with you just from smelling a little bit of leather. In my case, English bridal leather. One of the reasons why I love working with it, perhaps. But you're never gonna get that from a piece of imitation leather, vegan leather, or pineapple leather, or mushroom leather, or anything like that. Not that I can think of, anyway. Now, a while back, I can't remember whether it was a podcast or whether it was during a live. I think on more than one occasion, I've said that my predictions for the future of leather, whether that be for sustainability reasons, whether that be for cost savings, whether that be for being able to create things out of leather that are much bigger than your regular animal hide, I think the future is going to be in some kind of lab-grown leather using animal skin cells grown in some kind of, I don't know, massive petri dish, or some kind of 3D printer that can 3D print cells or something. I'm just making stuff up now. But I've always said, I bet you that's the future, because you could almost have a continuous roll of leather in any thickness that you want, almost any density. You could use skin cells from, say, a kangaroo, and have it so that it's much more durable than your average cowhide. Yet you could have it up to 7 millimeters thick of kangaroo leather. It would be the strongest leather that you could possibly get. So it could even be genetically modified to be more dense or stronger, or have some kind of high wear characteristics. It's quite interesting, right? It's quite interesting. Well, recently, in fact, for this podcast, when I was making some notes that I have there on the computer, I thought, why don't I just check to see what's the latest on that, if that even exists, because I don't know if it does. I haven't researched this before. It's just an idea that came to me. And a quick look online. It now exists in very small quantities. There are a few companies that are claiming that they do it, but there's nothing that's been put to market yet. So it's all kind of they're working on it. There is one small company that is using lab-grown leather made from skin cells of a currently living cow. So I don't know how they've harvested skin cells. They took a biopsy, if they just, I don't know, scraped a few layers of skin off or something. But interesting, because that potentially could be a way that vegans could use leather, a real leather in some ways, because if it was taken through means that weren't exploiting the animal, I guess is the issue behind veganism, without any pain, discomfort, or anything like that. Yeah, potentially it could be used, right? But yeah, the person doing it's a small business. I don't know how they're doing it, but they're making a few things like small wallets and whatnot. It's an interesting concept. I think they're, rather than refining it, they just want to be the first ones that did it. But that's become available in 2025, and I've been saying this for a long time. I've always said it's going to be called something really unimaginative, like biohide. So what I did is I put in lab-grown leather into Google search, and what came up, the first at the top of the list, was a company called Lab Grown Leather. I guess they got their SEO right, but they are a company. They're not making anything that you can buy yet, but having a look around their website, there was something that really caught my eye, and they are claiming that they're working on creating T-Rex leather by using synthesized DNA and fossilized T-Rex collagen. And they're currently looking for investors, okay? So they're not actually producing it. It's a theory, and they're looking for funding to enable them to do it. Now, there is no, from what I've researched, there's no DNA that's still around from when T-Rex went extinct, which I haven't got it written down, but something like 65 million years ago, or somewhere around that time, give or take a year. Yeah, so there's nothing in that. I think the last surviving DNA was something much closer to today, which is I think, don't quote me on this, about 2 million years or something like that, where the DNA is survived, at least in some parts. So it would be interesting to see how they would do that. I did ask ChatGPT, what's the likelihood of this happening? Is it going to be coming out soon? What research can you find on it? And it said it likely wouldn't be anything like real T-Rex skin, kind of obvious really, but they would most likely have to synthesize the DNA based on what they think it would be like. So I don't know how they're gonna figure that out, because there's nothing surviving, and they said they would most likely have to use AI to fill in the DNA blanks to come up with something. I think they're aimed at the luxury sector. At least that's kind of what they're alluding to on that particular page on their website, that they're gonna, make T-Rex leather for kind of cool bags. But taking a look at it, there was AI generated pictures of, a tote bag with reptilian looking skin, similar to a T-Rex, with a T-Rex in the background. And I thought, God, if you're using AI images, I don't know. I don't believe it's going to be a thing, but that's what they're saying that they're going to do. So they're going to synthesize the DNA and use fossilized T-Rex collagen to help create something. That's crazy. I mean, I hope it happens. I don't think it does. I hope it happens. And I hope it's really cool looking skin that we can buy and use. And it would just be so cool, because no animals would have been harmed. So anybody can use it technically. It's crazy. Personally, what would be really cool is to create a Velociraptor hide briefcase. That would be awesome. That would be like the ultimate thing to create. And I think eventually, when this, because it's too expensive to do now. Right now, and they can't do it in large sheets. They can't do it in large sizes. But eventually, the technology is going to be there, and you're going to be able to do it. And I think eventually, real leather is going to be more expensive to produce, because there's going to be less demand for it. and it involves a lot more work. You know, you've got to work that you've got to dehair the hide, you've got to scrape the flesh side of it. It's got to go through several splitting phases. There's so much involved in tanning leather, and involves a lot of skill and a lot of labor and a lot of specialist tools and equipment. And I think it's going to be maybe a very niche product in the future that would require some kind of authenticity guarantee, and people will buy leather and they're looking for stretch marks or inclusions in the skin and something to make it real. If it's too perfect, there's something wrong with it. It's almost going to be like the AI of leather. It's better in some ways, it makes absolute sense, but it's not natural. It's slightly off-putting, slightly creepy, and that's kind of what I see when I look at leather alternatives. It's an imposter. So my answer to what I think of leather alternatives, I think we already have great viable alternatives to leather out there already. And when it comes to things that are trying to pretend to be leather, they're awful. That's that's my answer. They're not good. And maybe one day they'll improve leather alternatives. There will be lab-grown leather widely available that we can use. And for some things it might make sense, but it will never have the soul of real leather, right? So in the meantime, and for the future, I'll continue to be using real leather, and I can imagine you probably will too. So thank you for watching or listening in, depending on whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it from your usual podcast platform. But thank you very much. Please drop me a like, and don't forget, on leathercraftmasterclass.com there is still a free video on how to hand stitch. So if you're a beginner or you're an advanced leather crafter and you want to see how I do things, or just brush up on the basics, don't forget to go to leathercraftmasterclass.com, enter your email address, and I will send you the video straight to your inbox. Thank you for listening, guys, and I will see you, or you'll hear me, in the next podcast. Take care.